book is on sale at a discount outside there. I don't know what the discount is, but apparently it's a good discount if you want to buy this book. Okay, next up, we have our final plenary panel on rethinking higher education business models, moderated by Sue Sundar, Director, Operations and Supply Chain Program Professor, Lecturer, Department of Operations and Information Systems at the University of Utah. Please welcome Sue and her panel up here.
Yes. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for sticking around for the very last session for today. I was a little bit worried that most of us would be napping, taking our afternoon naps at this time. So thank you for being awake and sticking around for our very last session. I will be introducing our panelists in just a second. But before that, just wanted to say that one of our panelists has an international flight to catch. And he has to drive to LAX. So that means we will stick to our time slot and end exactly at 4:10. So apologies for that, but we will not be able to go beyond 4:10 today. But I think we're ready to start. So let's talk about our topic for today. We have it on the screen right there, rethinking higher education business models. So that's our agenda for today. And so all of us have heard about Gartner, right? And there are three top things, that are common to, if you look at the top 25 superstars in supply chain, ranked by Gartner, the three top things that are common to all these companies are attract and engage talent, number one. Number two, AI driven advances. So we know that AI is a big thing right now. We can't do without that. We can't ignore it. It's something that is there to stay forever. And then anti-fragile supply chains. So those were the top three criterion for companies to be successful, particularly in the world of operations and supply chain, as ranked by Gartner. So if you look at the number one, which is attracting and engage talent, I think that's where we are going with rethinking higher education models, is how do we develop that talent, or what talent are we looking for that these companies eventually will attract? And being a professor myself, coming from an institution, a top-ranked institution, and involved in creating this educational models, it's important for me. That's something that I think about and I worry about. What do I do as a director of my program to help differentiate my students and create that talent? So I would like to start by introducing my panelists. To my left is Ali, and then they will give a brief introduction about themselves, about where they're coming from. And then we have Tony to my right, and then to the very right, we have Yao. And just a little bit before I give it to Ali on my left, I'm Sue Sundar, and I am a professor and director of the Operations and Supply Chain Program at University of Utah. And I've lived there, this is my 26th year in Utah, so I feel like I've pretty much grown up there. That's home to me, but I always love the sunny California, so thank you for having me here. Ali, I'll have you just introduce yourself.
I'm Ali Reza Kabirian. I go by Ali, and I'm an associate professor of clinical data sciences and operations. I spend my time on a little bit of consulting of some projects from industry, a little bit of research, and mostly teaching. In fact, most of the students that are in the audience today have either taken some class with me before, or they might be part of our They might be part of our new cohort of global supply chain management program, and they're going to be taking some classes with me coming up, I guess, in a few weeks. And since I'm working at USC Marshall, I work very closely with Nick West as the director of the program.
Thank you, Ali. Tony?
All right.
Yes.
Okay, it's on. Great. So I am Professor Tony Bell, and I'm an assistant professor of professional practice at Rutgers University in New Jersey. And been working at Rutgers now as an assistant professor for about 5 years. Before that, about 30 plus years of industry experience working for a number of big companies. I'm sure you've heard about a few of them: Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, Whirlpool Corporation, and also worked in consulting, and then started my career with a very small transportation company called Maersk. I'm sure many of you have heard of that organization. So just happy to be here.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everyone. Thank you for sticking around. I want to tell you something that you do not know. So to make this time worthy, my name is Yao. I'm a professor and also at Rutgers. Tony is my colleague. I have been there for 22 years. Now, I was the founding director for our master program in supply chain analytics. I would be happy to share our research on job market this year. Okay.
That'll be great. I think we'll love to hear from Yao on his research that he just pointed in a few minutes. So, you know, just who knows, like the top masters category in like Gartner's rankings of supply chains? Who are the big four masters, like the king of the kings? No, I'm talking about companies, not schools. So Amazon, we have Amazon, we have Apple, we have Unilever and Procter and Gamble. And then of course we have, you know, those are our superstars when it comes to supply chains. And then of course we have in the top 10, we have Johnson & Johnson, PepsiCo. PepsiCo is very dear to my heart because one of my first internships as a student, as an MBA student, was at PepsiCo, and also the CEO of PepsiCo, previous CEO of PepsiCo, Indra Nooyi, my superstars that I look up to. I hope I get to meet her sometime in my lifetime, but she's one of my heroes, my superheroes that I think, in terms of especially women leadership, all the women in the room. I listen to her a lot. I think she has a lot of leadership skills and also about how to get a company to move forward and be successful. So I'll start with my first question for our panelists. Which is, you know, going back to our topic of rethinking higher education business models, is why do we even need to rethink? Why can't we just keep doing what we're doing? Because it's working for us, right? So what's the reason for rethinking? And we can start in any order. Yes, Ollie, please.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it may have worked for us in the past, but that doesn't mean that it's going to continue to work. So I mean, there's a lot of pressure coming from various sides that there should be a change in our curriculum and the way that we teach our students. From the job market, we constantly get feedback that you know, the students once they graduate, they do not necessarily know how to solve problems in their world. So they want us to basically design curriculum that is based on real world problems. And there's a lot of competition between different schools teaching, you know, same kind of programs. And, you know, on let's say on the domestic side for our domestic students, I also see a pressure that at least in the business school environment, it's difficult to attract a domestic audience. For international students, there might be value, but not necessarily for the domestic audience. And then another pressure I see that requires some changes, what has been discussed in this conference, AI and new technologies that are becoming available, and that necessitates that you know, we have to make some changes in the way that we teach and our curriculum. So a lot of pressure.
Thank you, Ollie. Yao and Tony, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I would say for two reasons. The most important thing is the job market has changed. Now we have collected about 6,000 plus job advertisement from Indeed.com and Monster.com, where you submit your resumes, right? And from them earlier this year, 2024, we find very interesting trend. As you have may experienced, right? We talk about management a lot, but this time, if you look at the keywords, management is followed closely with analytics, especially data analytics. So now, so in practice, there's a huge demand, also increasing demand on people that not only has the personal skills, the soft skills, the leadership skills, but also hard data skills, right? I would say not as hard as cleaning the data as data engineers, but you should be able to interpret the data. You should be able to read the data to understand it, right? To make a business sense of the data. And that's what really needed in practice. But if you look at our curriculum, how many of us have learned it, have been teaching it? It's very few. So the practice has changed. And the second thing would be, another thing is we also look at job requirement. What do they need, right? A lot of people, not a job advertisement would say, okay, problem solving, very important. But in addition to that, there's another thing, problem discovery. So, they use different words to describe this, meaning they sometimes they say, you need to have a big picture, right? You need to be able to understand, to be able to proactive, right? To help the company define problems. Essentially, what they're saying is you have to help company discover and prioritize the problem. How would you do that? Again, data analytics. I will stop here and
Yeah, thank you. Tony?
No, I agree with all of these. And in fact, I think there might be more. So there's tons of challenges I think that we're facing, right? One is definitely around rising costs and affordability to be able to go to college in the first place, right? So we know, I mean, I'm sure that a number of students out here know the cost, right, of higher education. I know from my own degree and the fact that I had to, pay that off for a long period of time. So how do we start to put in or find ways to be able to manage those costs from a higher ed perspective, right, within our institutions? The second thing I think we're seeing too are a change in demographics, right? And so when I talk about demographics, there's a couple of things that I'm talking about, right? So one, I'm just talking about the student profile. So I think the student profile is changing a bit. And what do I mean by that? Well, we're finding that students are a bit older, in some cases. So how do we tailor some of our programming to account for, that maybe even additional need for flexibility for those older students? We're also finding that students want more flexibility. So looking at potentially online programs. I don't want to get into all the things that we can do to fix the problem, but definitely some of these things I did want to talk about. So the declining birth rates. And so is there something that we could at least do about that? If we can't do something about it, it's something we should at least keep on the radar, because we know that declining birth rates will eventually lead to, of course, less college students. So how do we best manage that in the future?
Thank you. I think some really good points brought up by our panelists here. First thing, real world problems. They talked about we need to basically train our students, whoever we are, with whatever institution, to solve and tackle real world problems. And those real world problems are also changing, right? The severity, the type that their students have to deal with as they become employees also keeps changing. I mean, as leaders in the industry, you know how your problems are changing over like today versus 10 years ago. AI is something we're all dealing with. Even as educators, I think we're dealing with AI and trying to figure out how do we incorporate that in a positive way in our education system. And then Yao brought a very good important point about data analytics. And so students in the audience, take your statistics classes a little bit more seriously. It may, I'm a professor of statistics amongst other classes that I teach, and I can tell you that's not a class that students are usually dreaming to get into or wanting to take, right? It's a dreaded class, but take that seriously, because those skills, if you really take those statistics skills with you, it'll really keep you in good, and on a good track to success at your company, because you'll be helping your company succeed. Because I always say data analysis, actually, if you do good data analysis, you can really unearth secrets about your customers, about your competitors, about your own business, the secrets that you didn't even know yourself, and that'll help you become a more profitable company. problem discovering, even understanding what problems we have, right? That
Exactly.
data analytics also helps you do that, is discovering what your problems are. And rising costs, of course, I think we talked about rising costs. How do we deal with, especially students, you in the auditorium here, you're dealing with these rising costs as a student, rent, even just renting to stay in your university town and so on, in addition to your tuition costs. So that brings me to my next question is, I think you guys touched about a little bit about curriculum and stuff like that. So maybe talk about what are some things in the curriculum that we could do as faculty members and directors and leaders in our program that would help our students and also businesses.
Well, I can start by saying some more experiential learning, right? So definitely having those learning opportunities where we can bring more practice into the classroom. So we talked about Gartner, right? In the top 25. Well, Gartner also looks at, I think somebody threw out Penn State, even though they kind of moved down the list of the top 25. So the top 25 supply chain management curriculum across all universities and colleges throughout the United States. Rutgers is number 5. Had to throw that plug out there. Sorry, USC. Sorry about that. Number 3 at our graduate level. Okay, I'll leave that alone. All right. But with that top 25, there's 3 things that Gartner looks at. So they look at the program size, they look at the program scope, and they look at industry value. And when it comes down to program scope in particular, 2 specific things they're looking for: global content or global exposure, and problem solving. And when we talk about problem solving, things that we're talking about too are critical thinking, analytical skills, right? I think there's overlap between all of those things. So those are 2 big things that Gartner's looking at. And the reason why is because they also have a connection to industry. Right? So I think it's really important for us to make sure that we're consistently connecting with our industry partners, many of you that are out here as well, to make sure that we're providing the right level of skills and knowledge to our students that are going to make them the most competitive when they're out there in the job market.
Thank you. Yao and Ali.
So I want to say just one thing. We need to teach students to do what the job requires. Okay, so let's come back to the job market analysis. We actually do this every year. We collect a lot of data from, and we do word natural language processing of all the ads we collected, find out what the company really want. And just by the way, I attend this 2 days workshop conference, and I noticed a significant difference between East Coast and West Coast. When we go to supply chain conferences, it looks like they talk about very different things. Now, on West Coast, do you know what's the difference? Okay, here's the difference. On the West Coast, people talk about, when they say supply chain, they mean logistics, mostly. But on East Coast, when people talk about supply chain, they mean procurement or supply management. Right, I'm not saying that you don't have anything about that, but I'm saying the focus, okay? Now, I'm not saying New York has no logistics at all. We also have a huge third-party logistics industry over there. I'm sure you have a lot of company buying things from in California too. But however, it seems the focus is very different. In the last panel, they were talking about ocean freight, right? Marines, right? Okay, everything is very important. Okay, now if you put things together, I think a good program, a master undergraduate program in supply chain management should be able to cover both. Now, here's our latest statistics. So if you look at the domains of in demand, the jobs, right? We find out the biggest demand is actually in procurement. Now our search is national. It doesn't focus on certain area, right? So the highest the highest demand is in procurement and sourcing, and which is followed by logistics and inventory and supply chain planning. Now, of course, there is a job called supply chain analyst, which actually is the highest. I believe that's the envelope that covers everything, right? So when a company says, "Oh, I want to hire a supply chain analyst," that person should be responsible for data analysis of all the functions. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Ali?
Yeah, just to add to what Tony and Yao was saying. So historically, when you look at the curriculum and the courses that are taught in schools, most of the topics are topics that the professors like to include in those courses. I think that that is changing, and that should be changing because it should be, in fact, the industry that should dictate what topics should be taught, not the professors. And I know that a lot of my colleagues might not like that because they think that they know better than anybody else. What is, for example, a good topic to include in operations management or supply chain management class, but that is not what the industry really wants. So that's the reason that you see, in fact, a lot of the programs, at least in business school and in supply chain management in particular, have advisory boards. So these are the professionals in industry that gather with the faculty and they provide what are the needs of the industry, what are the jobs out there, and what are the areas that they want students to be trained in. And they basically advise the faculty on what the topics should be. And so this is in addition, of course, you need experiential learning. Of course, you need to design classrooms that are fun and interactive, right? Especially in the business school environment, that if you want to keep our students engaged in classroom, they should feel that they're learning in class, right? So this is very different from let's say teaching a class in, let's say, physics 101. And in fact, I would question if you want to learn, let's say, for example, do you really need to come to classroom, or would you just be able to learn on your own at home, right? So I think that if you really have to come to classroom, it has to be for discussions, for discussing different problems, looking at the problem from different angles, learning about the perspective of others about the same problem, gaining critical thinking in classroom environment, and having some hands-on experiences, right? And those could be created by simulations, games, industry projects, getting to as close as possible to real world. And this is in fact a practice that you would see more in medical school. They do a very good job of educating doctors, right? So, and I think that's something that you have to learn in a business school environment, that, if you're in medical school, you spend a lot of time in a hospital trying to learn from the interactions of the doctors and the patients, and some time in classroom as well. This is something that we have to do in I think, business school environment as well.
Thank you. Very, very good points brought up. Going back to Ali's point about the hospital, I think you wouldn't want a doctor treating you who's just read textbooks, correct? I mean, you eventually see a doctor that actually has seen a bunch of patients before they actually graduate from medical school. And now obviously then they go on to do their fellowship and other advanced degrees. So I think same thing in the business world. Dealing with whether it's finance or operations or supply chain or marketing, you want these people not just having sat in a class and read textbooks, but actually worked with the company hands-on and done that real life business, solving real life business problems. And that's exactly what Ali's talking about, is let's have more of our students do that hands-on stuff. And I think that's something at University of Utah, as a director of my program, something that I'm very passionate about personally is the capstone program that we have, where not just one student, not just one or a handful, but every student in my program, I can say, has real life world experience, because all of them go through this capstone experience where they have to work with a real company for an entire semester and solve real life world problems at top companies like PepsiCo, Intermountain Healthcare, Micron, Intel, and so on. So to name, all these big names, but learning how to solve problems there. And I think that's what we need more of our curriculum, to have hands-on experience, as our panelists pointed out, experiential learning. More than just textbook concepts are great, but do they actually work in the real world? How does the textbook concept that I learned today apply to a food and beverage company like PepsiCo versus a chip making company like Micron? And how do those two things, a potato chip versus the chip that goes into your computer, how do those two companies differ in terms of applying our supply chain concepts? That's something I want to know. And I want to know that early on while I'm in school. And global, I think the global context too. I think we are in today's world, We're very much connected globally, and especially our supply chains are spread across the world. And we need to be able to have the global context very much in mind. So I think the global supply chain context and understanding how we are connected as businesses and how when something goes wrong in one part of the world, it has a huge repercussions, 10,000 miles away for our business, of course, but through our suppliers and other ways. So that takes me to my next question, which is, and I have a lot more questions on my list, but I think I want to talk about mentorship. As professors, do you see any value of mentorship and real life role models for our students? And how can we do that? How can we help? If you do see value, how can we help that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so like I said, as you get close to real world situation, the value of mentorship becomes even more important. If I'm trying to teach, let's say, I don't know, a topic class that I've learned in my own school, it's very easy for me to do that. And probably students are going to learn it without any kind of mentorship. But if the students are going to be working on real world challenges, real world projects through experiential learning components that they have in their courses, they really need a mentor, right? And by that, I don't mean just the professors to be the mentors. I believe that in most successful programs, at least that I've seen, mentors are also coming from industry. So those advisory boards typically are, people, professionals from industry that they sit down even with faculty and then try to help the student as those students are trying to work on those real world projects. So I see a lot of value in that.
Yeah, and I honestly think you can find mentorship in so many ways, right? Just like you talked about. So we have students that are involved, or we try to get them involved in some of the student clubs. So we have a couple of different supply chain clubs on campus where we definitely push students to be more involved, our supply chain majors, to be more involved in those clubs so that they can network. They can at least maybe learn from their peers as well, and also have that kind of peer mentoring in addition to mentoring from us as professors. We also have a program as well. We have a number of these Road to Wall Street. We have a Road to Supply Chain Leadership program as well. And what's great about that program, it's extremely competitive. It's for freshmen and sophomores primarily. Of course, at that point, they haven't necessarily said that they're going to declare supply chain as a major, but it's also a way for us to recruit, right? And start to kind of bring them over into the supply chain space. But with that, there's a great deal of mentoring that's done in that program from our company sponsors. So we have a number of company sponsors that help to oversee the program. They advise us with the program as well, but they also provide that one-on-one mentorship that needs to happen, right? And that actually happens at the higher levels of the organization. So you're talking about, chief supply chain officer, or a senior director that will now have that or establish that relationship with one of our students. We usually take about 10%, even less than that, of those that apply. So it is extremely competitive, but that mentorship is extremely important. And not that you can only get it Road to Supply Chain Leadership program. There's other ways that we try to bring that mentorship to our students as well. Again, through student clubs, through companies that we bring in. In fact, we have a number of companies that continue to want to engage with us in a number of ways. And the ways to do that, of course, is to invite them to some of our programming, have them meet students at those programs and things like that. So many different ways that we're trying to figure out how we can further engage with companies and also create even more mentorship opportunities.
Great. I want to first tell you something that you may not know. From our job analysis, we find out, this is not relevant, but I will come back to this. Actually, in the West, so if we split the United States into 4 regions, right? West, Middle West, South, and Northeast, we find out 50% of the job advertisement in the West come from California. So I think USA really in a great position, right?
That's good news for our students.
Yeah, that's great news for the students, for the faculty, and also for the program. Okay, that's first thing I want to share. Now, let's come back to mentorship. What I want to say here is so we will customize our curriculum so students can exercise it, can play it instead of, like I already said, right, instead of listen to boring lectures. Okay, now I want to give you an example, very quick example. So we will go all the way to help students finding jobs. But first, we want to demonstrate the power of data analytics to students. So they're going to use data analytics to find their dream jobs. What's your dream job? Well, I would say for most people, two conditions, right? First, something you like to do. And second, makes you tons of money, correct? All right, now if I can say, let's translate it to more easily understand term. That means you can find a job that do not require you to work too much, but can pay you a lot, right? And you have career paths, can grow, and also you have job security. Now, the thing I can tell you is there is a job like that. But without data analytics, you won't be able to find it. Okay, that's my first lesson to our students. Find your dream job. So they're going to experience, so we'll put them into a huge data set, a huge database. And with visualization tools, they just click a few buttons, they will be able to compare different industries, different companies, different countries. And so I asked them, go find the industry you want to enter. That is a sunrise industry instead of a sunset. Okay. And within that sunrise industry, find the companies you want to work for that are likely to pay you a lot without asking you to work too much. Right. And data could tell you, could really point to the past, to such companies or industries or regions. By the way, one of the conclusion is California is a nice place to go. If you want to know more, just you know where to find me. I would be happy to share my teaching stuff with you.
So I personally believe mentorship plays a huge role in the success of anybody, actually. So even for us, right, seasoned, I still look up to my mentors. So I feel like even at this age, I benefit from having mentors in my life even now, and I've always had good mentors. So I think I'm very lucky for that reason. That and I think that's what I would say to the students in the auditorium is, go seek those mentors. They're around you. Sometimes you don't know they're sitting right next to you, and you know, seeing what their journey was and all the difficulties that you're facing today are probably a lot of things are common with what they faced, and they can give you a little bit of advice and a pat on the back as well to sort of keep you going in the right direction. So thank you for your thoughts on that. Just a few more minutes before you know, with what we have left here, I want to ask you. You know, we have our engineering school, we have our other schools at the universities, you know, where students get different skills that helps companies. But what is the value, the unique value of a business school education in your mind? You know, because you have students who get computer science engineering degrees that work at Intel or Microsoft or other companies. But what is the value in particular for a business school education?
I see the value in a variety of different perspectives that business school students gain in a business school environment. If you are a mechanical engineer or I don't know, computer engineer, you develop a product, but you don't understand the customers. You don't understand who is paying for that product. You don't understand how to market that product. I'm pretty sure that you're going to fail, right? So you have to understand market. You have to understand finances of the company. You have to understand leadership, management, and these are the kind of skills that you typically learn in a business school environment. So our students have broader perspective, I would say, than the students in engineering school or in sciences. I'm not saying that, you know, people are not hiring mechanical engineers. If you have like a very technical subject, you would still want to hire those people. But even if you want to hire those people, you would hire the ones that understand market. So, but our students already learn about these topics in a classroom environment. And the other value that we create is by the way that we teach our students. Typically in a business school environment, there's a lot of hands-on experiences, a lot more projects typically than in engineering school or in sciences. So I think we are in business school closer to real world environment than the engineering school. I think the closest would be probably medical school and law school. They have far more internships and hands-on experiences than business school. But I think that we are still better than engineering school and sciences, right? So they are next in line, I would say. So those are kind of values that we create for the students.
Yeah, and we do get a lot of students from, in our MBA programs. I teach in the MBA programs. Like we have a very good executive MBA programs at our different universities. And we do see people from different backgrounds, whether they're physicians, whether they're engineers, whether they are, rocket scientists or wherever they are, they eventually come and they get their MBA because those skills do help you. The business skills, like you said, do help you sort of understand the market, understand your competitors, understand how to, the bottom line, basically, right? How to get that money flowing in, more money flowing in than flowing out. Any other thoughts, Tony and Yao?
I mean, I agree. I think it's definitely the organizational skills. I think it's the problem solving skills. I think it's the critical thinking skills. I think it's analytical skills, but it's a tough question because it also comes down to interest. Right. So why do you choose the major that you choose in the first place? Well, in part, it's interest. So, I think it's a matter of, everybody says, find your passion, right? Well, I think to a degree, yes, but it's your passion and your strength. And I think it's a combination of those two things. So it's hard to say, choosing a business, over something else, because a large part of it too is the interest that you have and what you want to do. So if you want to be an artist,
Yeah.
you probably won't necessarily go into business, right?
Tony brought up a good point about passion, right? People say find your passion. I think you become passionate about something when you become good at it. So you don't know you're passionate about something when you're not good at it. So but when you're good at it, when you do it many, many, many times and you get good at it and really good at it, then you get passionate about it, right? And so I think that's how you take on tough things. So don't, sometimes our students think, oh, maybe choosing what's easy for me, maybe that's passion. Actually, no. Choose what is tough for you, hard for most people to do. And when you get good at that stuff, then you become passionate about that as well. Yao, any thoughts?
I think I get this question a lot. Actually, I was when we were designing our supply chain analytics program, we were facing exact same question. So because our school's computer science department, the engineering department also has similar programs. And look at their curriculum, it's much more hardcore, right? It's all math, physics, and programming, coding, and so on. And so that's why when we design our programs, well, I still keep some coding, but I don't want to emphasize on that. Think about this. We are at best amateur computer scientists, right? In business school, we will not be able to compete with our professors in computer science department. And we teach coding to our students, to business school students. Okay. Now, 90% of students will hate it. This is actual number. Maybe 10% will feel good, but 90% will hate it. And they pay so much money, they're not expecting to know coding or intensive coding in our classes. So that made me think, what's the real value of business school? Why we charge so much money? Why would people pay so much to get into our school, right? Now, after so many experiments, we figure out, I think what I propose a solution here, but it's just from my own perspective. I think in the value of business school is not data engineering. Okay, if you look at data, everybody likes data, right? Now, in business school, I can tell you, everybody is crazy about data when they talk about it. But when you actually show them the data, the programming in Python, 90% will hate it. So what's the problem? Here's the issue. They pay that much money. What they want to get is data interpretation. It's not to engineer the data. It's just to extract insights from the data. And that's what I want to teach them. Not what I teach them, I want to share with them. Okay, so what is the secret behind the data? When you see this, everybody can see the same data, right? The data is all public, right? When you see the data, some people say, hey, this is a great investment opportunity. Somebody say a huge danger coming up, but somebody don't say anything. Well, that's the skill we want a student to have. Let me just expand a little bit what I said earlier. Now, Tony and Ali, they all said about problem solving, which I completely agree. But I think for problem solvers, you find an engineer that's probably better for problem solvers because they have more hardcore skill. And for business students, there's one skill that engineer students do not have. That's problem discovery. Find and prioritize the problems for your company and your position, right? You have a big picture, right? You will be able to guide the company. You don't, you go to companies, you don't have to be given a problem to solve. You can find problem yourself. And that's what company really want, right? People here from industries, what do you think? You want to find a guy that has to be told to do something, or you want to find the people that will take initiatives and really, look at the data and find and prioritize the data and solve for you. What would you need? Which one is more valuable? Maybe later the person who can discover a problem is not such a good engineer, cannot solve problem to perfection. Okay, but at least he's going in the right direction. Right? He can pick up the most important problem, well, and it's partially solve it. Right? Versus somebody find the wrong question and really solve to optimality. Which one would you prefer? So come back to the value of business school, right? So we want our student to be able to discover problems. We want our student to be able to read data and extract insights.
No, thank you. Like I said, we do have a hard stop in exactly 2 minutes because one of us has to catch an international flight and reach LAX on time. So, just to sort of wrap it up in the next 1.5 minutes, really it's about helping, like we said, the top 3 things that is common to the top top companies who are ranked in the top 25 in supply chain in the world, like Apple and Amazon and Unilever and Procter & Gamble and Colgate and PepsiCo and Coca-Cola. The top skill, the top one is the training of finding that human talent, right? And that's where the rethinking of higher education business models comes into play. And I think I saw our panelists bring up the point about solving real world problems, talking about data analytics. That came up quite a bit, that we really need, because everybody has data, by the way. I tell companies that I work with on different projects, your data is your key to solving problems. You have that already. It's there embedded in your computer systems. The only thing you have to do is you have to analyze it. And so being able to have good analysts on your panel, in your workplace, who can analyze this data, solve problems, even identify problems, right? Sometimes we don't even know what the problem is. It's like going to a doctor and trying to figure out why am I having all these aches, body aches or whatever. So trying to figure out the problem, that's the root cause, and then trying to fix them through analysis of data. And then AI, I think we've understood over the last 2 days that AI is something that we have to deal with it, whether we like it or not. Some of us like it more than others, but regardless, we have to train our workforce. There is a danger for some of the jobs to go extinct because AI will take its place. But then there's also ways to get really more efficient because of AI. We can do our jobs much faster and in a shorter time and with less errors. And so that we can use AI to our advantage as well, and also reduce our costs. I think coming from an operations and supply chain perspective, I think all of us agree that efficiency is the key for the success of a business, which is what? What is efficiency? If you were to explain that to a layperson, I think all our executives in the room will agree that efficiency in a layperson's language is basically how do you achieve the highest quality for the lowest cost, right? That's what efficiency is, with very little waste or no waste if I can help it. So having a very lean company is something that we want to focus on as well. So having that efficiency, having those high quality, low costs, and making sure that I'm not having a lot of wastage in my company and having a lean company. So I think we can go on and on about the different things that are important to our education models. But I think like we said, we are short of time, so we will finish up unless our panelists have any last minute thoughts. Okay, all right. Thank you to our audience. Thank you for giving us your attention.